Yo everyone, this is random Chinese interviewer reporter reporting from Xinjang, and as you can see around me, there is no Uyghur Muslim that is being persecuted. No Uyghur Muslims are being, there's no genocide. It's all a bunch of baloney. It's a myth. There's no genocide happening. The Uyghurs are, as you can see, are living happily. They're dancing for no reason and everything's just fine, Come on, keep walking. Excuse me, sir. Are you a Chinese police officer? Yes. Well, where are you taking this young man? Oh, don't worry about him. We're taking him to a re-education camp. Really? Is he okay? Sir, are you okay?
I'm okay, I'm just going to the re-education camp, man. It's the happiest day in my life.
Are you sure you're okay? You're kind of crying right now. Oh, don't worry about that. Whenever we take Uyghurs to the re-education camps, they're very excited, So they get emotional and they start crying sometimes, Don't worry about it. Huh, wait, what's that on your shoulder? Is that a dead body? Oh, you mean this one? Oh, no, don't worry. It's not a dead body. It's just, this Uyghur, he fell asleep when we were taking him to the re-education camp. So I'm just helping him, I'm carrying him. Man, that is so nice of you. See, and people are saying that apparently the Chinese government is committing genocide. Such rubbish. Yeah, it's totally rubbish. By the way, you kind of look like a Uyghur. Where are you from? Oh, me? I am a Uyghur actually. I was actually born here. I was in Australia for a few years, then I came back. Really? Huh. Hey, how would you like to come with us to the re-education camp? We would love to hear about your travels and adventures. Really? Sure, I'd love to come. That sounds like a great idea. I bet you it is. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Islamic Defense Podcast. So a few months back, I promised that I would make a video on China, or more specifically Chinese propaganda against the Uyghur genocide. So recently I watched a news report by the Chinese news channel CGTN. In the news report, the reporter claimed that there is apparently nothing going on in China.
There's no Uyghur genocide in China. All the Uyghurs over there are dancing and having a great time.
And the Western government is just jealous. That's what's happening. So I decided to watch the so-called news report and fact-checked everything that he said in the video. As it turns out, he's a liar. So let's take a look at some of the clips from this so-called news report, and then after watching these clips, I'll make my response.
By now, we're all too familiar with the Western narrative on Xinjiang and the so-called re-education camps. Many Western reports suggest that this is little more than a quote-unquote Nazi concentration camp where people inside are going through hell. Now, what better way?
By the way, I love the way he says the Western narrative. It's like China was married to the West and then they broke up, and now the West is being an angry ex-wife, and just giving it its narrative. First of all, the re-education camp narrative has nothing to do with the West. This story is being confirmed by the Uyghurs themselves. It's not some Western propaganda. Now, one good example would be Brother Sabur Ahmed himself. As you know, Brother Sabur Ahmed, he's quite active in regards to the Uyghur issues. He has interviewed multiple different Uyghurs, survivors of these camps. And also you can check out Brother Arsalan Hidayat as well. He's also very active, and none of them are Western, they're not Western journalists. One is a Pakistani, the other is a Uyghur himself. So there's no Western propaganda going on. Also, there are countless testimony from the Uyghurs themselves, which has nothing to do with the West. As a matter of fact, the West doesn't give two shits about the Uyghurs. It's only after the Uyghur voices became too loud that the West started to do something. Seriously, think about it. Why on earth would the West pick a fight with China for no reason? I mean, they are in business, they're business partners. I mean, do you honestly think that they're all of a sudden just going to start attacking their business partner? I mean, do you know how much money Western governments have invested in China? They have literally spent billions of dollars investing in China. For example, there's one study that says America in 2019 has invested nearly $160 billion in China. Ask yourself, why on earth would the West ruin a very good business relationship like this? Unless there was seriously something going on. So no, this is not some Western narrative, and it has nothing to do with the West. This is a Uyghur narrative. The Uyghurs are coming out because they're being treated horribly. There's an active genocide going on against them. And inshallah, in this video, I'll prove it without a shadow of a doubt. This is something that is happening. Regardless, let's continue.
To verify some of their claims than to actually get to the heart of it all. This is Kashgar, a predominantly Uyghur Muslim city in southwestern Xinjiang. To begin with, most Western reports suggest...
By the way, this is something I've noticed that the Chinese government does. So they basically show a bunch of random clips of Uyghurs dancing and being happy, and then they act like, you know, nothing is going on in Xinjiang. They're actually, the Chinese government and the Chinese news channels are actually committing the strawman argument fallacy. You see, no one is saying that everyone in Xinjiang is being killed openly in the streets. I mean, that's not how genocide works. So there are a few rules when it comes to genocide. First of all, it's done in secret. Obviously, they're not going to kill people openly. That's stupid. And it gives them too much press. 2, they do it in an area where there is no communication with the outside world. This keeps things hidden, and it helps them keep things secret. And this way, no one finds out what's actually happening. The most perfect way to do it is to do it in a jail or a concentration camp, which is exactly what they're doing. 3rd, and I know this sounds weird, but when a government commits genocide, they don't kill everyone. I feel like this is a misconception that people have, that genocide means killing everybody. No, that's not what a genocide is. That's a massacre. Genocide is the systematic reduction of a certain group of individuals or a certain group of people. One of the main purposes of a genocide is to reduce the population or exterminate it completely. It can be done various different ways. They can either kill them systematically, or, you know, brainwash them, torture them, to turn them into something else, or they can force sterilize them, their women, so they cannot no longer have children, or they can forcefully marry their woman to their own ethnic tribe, which is something that the Chinese government is actually doing. Either way, the main purpose is to reduce or exterminate the race or the people. And this is exactly what China is doing. They know full well that they cannot kill everyone in the region, because that would be stupid. I mean, they need the workforce. So they're turning everyone into a Chinese citizen. They are wiping out any trace of the traditional Uyghur race, culture, and religion. The people you normally see walking around, chances are they're not religious. China is committing genocide against religious, conservative Muslim Uyghurs. As a matter of fact, we actually have evidence of them taking Uyghur men in secret in the middle of the night. A few years back, Vice did a report on China where they actually went to Xinjiang. They said that they saw men being taken silently in the middle of the night. Here's a clip.
It was 12:30 a.m. when we walked back to the hotel. The streets were dead. Then we saw movement. So we're just watching as a bunch of policemen are marching 8 Uyghur men, young men, all the way down the street to the police station. We've just watched them for the last 4 minutes or so march in complete dead silence. What were the similarities in terms of actually being taken to these camps?
Asasen mında dastlabda kecha tutuldi bular. Bunun maqsadi, kechada apirishning maqsadi shu insonlarning izdiriqli g'oyib bo'lganda topolmasligi uchun.
So as you saw in the video, the Vice reporter saw Uyghur men being taken secretly in the middle of the night. This is how they're doing it. They're not doing it by, they're not going around and chopping people's head off in the street. That's not what they're doing. So just because you see people walking around normally doesn't mean things are normal. This is also confirmed by many Uyghur refugees themselves, who said that they took people in the middle of the night and they did it in secret. So just because things seem normal in Xinjiang doesn't mean it actually is. The genocide is still taking place. However, it is taking place in secret. So the argument that it seems normal, therefore it's okay, is not valid or acceptable. Either way, let's continue.
To begin with, most Western reports suggest people inside these education centers could be there indefinitely. Now, local officials said the vast majority of the attendees have actually picked up a skill, completed the program, and went home. We traveled across Xinjiang in the past few days and actually found some of these attendees. 26-year-old Rukia Yakub spent 10 months in the education center. While there, she perfected her Mandarin skills and studied sales. Now she is a real estate sales agent, earning over 8,000 yuan or over $1,100 a month, way above the local average.
我觉得我现在变得更快乐了。我学国语，我就又可以接汉族客户，又可以接维族客户，然后都就收入这块特别可观。
Here they're commenting big in the question fallacy. I mean, you cannot use the local Chinese authorities as authorities on this matter because they're the one who are under investigation. So it begs the question, I mean, what makes you think these Chinese authorities are reliable? How do you know they're not lying? Also, I actually looked up this Rukia Yakub. It seems like she's actually used in a lot of Chinese propaganda materials. So I was kind of curious. What's interesting is that I actually found that Chinese government is actually giving us a contradictory story here. For example, according to a post by China Daily that was posted, I think it's 2019, it says that she's working as a guide in a vocational and training center. However, here in the clip, the reporter is saying that she is apparently working as a real estate agent. So which one is it? Is she working as a guide in a vocational training center, or is she working as a real estate agent? Because they both can be true at the same time. So which one is it? Now, you know what? Fine, no problem. Let's give China the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she was working in a vocational training center in 2019. Then a year later, she learned a lot of things and she became a badass, real estate agent. And then she went on to make $1,000 a month, right? Fair enough. So what? That doesn't prove anything. That's just one person. Here, they're committing the history generalization fallacy. Just because a few Uyghurs were released from the camps doesn't mean that they're all released from the camp or that they're not staying there indefinitely. There is a Uyghur database that is based on various different sources such as testimony of the relatives or the family members and others. And according to this database, there are thousands of Uyghurs that are still locked up or missing. They provided all sources where they get their testimonies from. So here's a few names of Uyghurs who are still locked up for no reason, for little or no reason. For example, there is Kulpash Abdir Rahman. She was taken to the camp in 2018 and she still has not been released. This was confirmed by her brother. Also, another sister of hers is also locked up as well. She was arrested for quote-unquote going abroad. Her entry is 1259. There is Konash Bek Abel, by the way, I'm sorry if I'm butchering the name. He was also arrested in 2018 and he's still locked up. His entry is 1261. By the way, you can search their names in the database to get more info. This was confirmed by his brother-in-law. There is Molotibek Kasni, who was arrested in 2018 and he is still locked up. Then there is Nurstan Tosun, and she was taken to this camp in 2017 and she still has no contact with her family since then. She's still in the prison, in the camps. So as you can see, there is a huge number of Uyghurs that are still locked up, and they were locked up in the year 2016 to 17 and they have no contact with their family members. So when the reporters say that they could stay there indefinitely, they're absolutely correct. There are thousands of Uyghurs that are still locked up and they are still there indefinitely and their family members have no idea what's happening to them. So it doesn't matter that a few Uyghurs have been released. The truth is that a huge number of Uyghurs are still locked up and they have no contact with their family members. And not only that, they're possibly being tortured or worse, even killed. And this is something that the Chinese government need to be open about and at least give the family members some kind of clarity. However, I'll talk more about it later on. Regardless, let's continue.
Another claim was that after these training programs, some Uyghurs are still missing. Still no info is gathering steam on Western social media. We questioned local government officials about this. And the answer we got was among the 100 plus missing Uyghurs, half of them cannot be verified due to incomplete information such as misspelling of names, and a third are under criminal investigation or convicted criminals.
Really? Misspelling their names is the reason you can't find these people? I mean, how stupid do you think people are? I mean, you are one of the most advanced surveillance state. Do you honestly expect people to believe that you can't find information of these missing people? You have thousands of cameras in Xinjiang, millions of police in Xinjiang. So what happened? Did your camera stop working in Xinjiang for some reason? I mean, they were working fine when you arrested them. So what happened? Here's some advice, dear Chinese government. If you're gonna bullshit us, do a better job. Okay? Just admit that you either killed them or took them back to the camps. Don't lie. At least give the family members some clarity.
The Chinese government can peer into the two dominant payment systems, Alipay and WeChat, as it sees fit. It's already started tracking behavior as part of a plan to rank citizens and measure how good and obedient they are. It's true. Try to jaywalk in certain parts of Shenzhen, and the government's facial recognition will spot you. There's even a board of shame showing the faces of recent offenders.
And what is this nonsense about a third of them being criminal? I mean, what crimes did these people even commit? You know what? Let's take a look at this. Look at the Uyghur database and see what horrible crimes these Uyghurs have committed. Here is the data of Ahmed Hassan. He was arrested and jailed for 9 years. Why, you may ask? Well, he was praying in the mosque on a regular basis.
What? This is such a crime. How dare he?
I wish I was joking, but this is actually what they consider a crime. This atheist piece of shit that thinks that a Muslim man praying 5 times a day on a regular basis is a crime. That's their category of what a crime is. A man praying 5 times a day. Then there are also cases like that of Zalkin Zakishbak, who traveled to another country. Apparently that's a crime now. So as you can see, these so-called criminals are not really criminals at all. They're just normal people doing normal things. And they're being locked up for no reason. And then they're calling it quote-unquote crime. Praying is not a crime. A person following their own religion is not a crime. It has never been. So this is a lie that most of them are criminals. Either way, let's continue.
The rest are actually living normal lives, and many of them have never been to the education centers, including 67-year-old Hanimham Tudi. Facebook user published this video claiming to be Hanimham Tudi's daughter and said her mother was put in these education camps. Recently, there has been some videos on the internet going viral saying that you have been missing, saying that you have been in this re-education camps in Xinjiang. Is that true?
By the way, I just want to pause the video on this clip. If you notice, the old woman is actually crying. Now, why the hell is she crying? I mean, also, where's the rest of her family? Where are her sons and daughters? Now, in the Uyghur database, she is actually listed by her grandson. Her grandson, Eli, claims that she was taken to these camps. In the database, it says, after Eli saw the CGTN video, he doubts that his father and 2 uncles and daughter-in-law of his family and even over 10-year-old children of the family are in the camp because they should be around when some guests come to the house, but they weren't. The testifier thinks that the victim of her grandmother was forced to talk in the interview after she was released from the camp and the victim was thinner than before. So he's basically saying what I'm saying. There is no way 2 old grandparents would be by themselves when a guest comes into the house. This interview is obviously fake and forced because you can literally see that the older woman, she was crying. As a matter of fact, this is not the first time CGTN has been accused of forced interview. In March, the Australian news network SBS actually suspended CGTN after getting complaints from human rights organization. In an article, the Guardian, it says, Australian public broadcaster SBN has suspended broadcasts from Chinese state media channels CGTN and CCTV pending a review into human rights complaints. SBS told The Guardian it was reviewing a complaint sent by human rights organization Safeguard Defenders, which claimed that CGTN and CCTV programs regularly shown on the multicultural broadcaster had in the past included dozens of forced confession both domestically and internationally, in breach of SBS Code of Conduct. In another place of the article, it says, CGTN is the English and other language broadcaster for state media broadcaster CCTV. Programs from both stations that aired on SBS as part of its Great Wall package were among those found to have broadcast forced confession of at least 56 people between 2013 and 2020. Safeguard Defenders said, these broadcasts involved the extraction, packaging, and airing of forced and false confession of prisoners held under condition of duress and torture. Safeguard Defenders said in its letter to SBS and Australian Media Regulator, ACMA. So as you can see, CGTN has a history of broadcasting fake and forced confession out of people. There are a few rules when it comes to interviews. For example, if someone is under pressure, you cannot interview them, because there is a chance that they might be forced to say something just to get out of a tough situation. For example, the old woman was still living in Xinjang in China. She is clearly scared of the Chinese government and is clearly under pressure. Therefore, any interview that is conducted in Chinese soil is completely invalid. It cannot be accepted because she is clearly under pressure. She is under duress. Also, since CGTN has a history of broadcasting forced interview, therefore this testimony or report also cannot be trusted. Either way, let's continue.
Also, many Western sources say China has detained anywhere between 1 to 3 million Uyghurs, a figure repeated so many times that it is almost considered a fact. Now, according to Gray Zone, an independent agency dedicated to investigative journalism.
Okay, so when it comes to anti-Uyghur Chinese propaganda, there is one name you'll hear constantly. It's called Gray Zone. So in case you guys don't know, Gray Zone is a so-called independent agency, news agency. They claim that they do investigative journalism, and this news agency is actually spearheaded or led by a man named Max Blumenthal. Now, this guy and his team, Gray Zone, are a complete bunch of grifters. They have a habit of spreading fake and false news, and basically they do everything in their power to try to cast doubt in genuine atrocities that are committed by authoritarian government. And the funny thing is that they almost always take the sides of the fascist government and always condemns the other side, which is interesting because there are some reports that shows that they even have accepted rewards or prizes from authoritarian governments. For example, there is one Al Jazeera byline reporter who completely exposed this guy as the grifter that he is, and he completely exposed him for false reporting. For For example, in 2018 to 2019, Max Blumenthal went to Venezuela. While he was staying there, he shot some footage at a rich neighborhood and claimed that Venezuela did not have any food distribution issues.
Cheeses, there's a lot of cheeses and meats here. There's a lot of meats. There isn't an issue here with food distribution or food scarcity.
However, this is a lie. The reporter named Joshua Collins, who is a byliner in Al Jazeera, he absolutely debunks his claim. He posted a video footage of him interviewing various different migrants near the borders of Venezuela or near the village areas.
3.7 million Venezuelans have left the country since 2015. That's over 10% of the population. Principal route of Venezuelan migration runs from this border town to Bogota and points beyond. I took that journey on foot, 600 kilometers over 8 days. I talked with hundreds of Venezuelans along the way. I'd like to show you what they said.
¿Por qué ustedes salieron de Venezuela?
Por la situación que estamos pasando allá en Venezuela. La hambre.
¿Qué está pasando en Venezuela?
No hay comida. Necesidad, no hay comida. Tenemos ropa.
¿Y por qué salió usted de Venezuela?
Por la situación. No hay comida, siempre se va la luz, nunca hay nada. Ni medicamentos, ni insumos, nada.
En Venezuela no hay trabajo, no hay comida, no hay nada, la situación, todo está peor.
Meet some locals and stuff. Should be interesting. So this supermarket, I showed you the supermarket in the last video. This is more of just like a local shop, but just to give you an idea of a shop inside Caracas, which you saw yesterday, and a shop outside. This one's pretty much empty. Have a look.
Mister, una preguntita, disculpa. Yo vine a Juan. This is Nick. Old place in the old town of Chirimena. We are now in Chirimena, and this is like a liquor store. Grocery store. They sell here like food or something, but as you can see, there are no food right now. The only thing that you can eat here is this cassave.
But that's the only food available in this whole shop. The rest is alcohol, right?
Well, as you see, there are only alcohol right now here. The shells is the name of this.
Yeah.
Are empty.
And why are they empty?
Because there are nothing here to sell. There was a time when maybe this was full of food, but right now, if you want to fill this shelf, you have to bring the food from the city, and maybe for them it's not affordable.
And just for an idea, is this quite typical for like outside of Caracas?
Yeah, if you go outside of Caracas, maybe you can find a lot of these kind of places.
Here is a quote from one of the migrants. You don't know what it's like to work all day only to be able to afford a few tomatoes and some lettuce, to make a little salad, and to wake up to your daughter telling you I'm hungry, but you have nothing to give her. You can imagine the feeling of powerlessness. This is taken from a Venezuelan immigrant near Cúcuta, Colombia in 2018. Now that's not all, this gets even worse. The article also shows countless examples of Grey Zone lying over and over again. It's like a fake news empire. They have their own YouTube channel, they have their website. And so another example is, in another place the article says, when I first heard of their antics as I worked on the Venezuela border, Grey Zone were recently returning from a trip in Nicaragua. One in which they framed a fiercely violent government oppression of protest that killed hundreds and injured thousands as a justified response. Human rights investigator invited to the country by Nicaragua President Ortega, however, did not agree with those claims. The Inter-American Commission of Human Rights stated that the regime had used lethal weapons against children and students, and had arbitrarily detained hundreds of peaceful protesters who had been subsequently exposed to treatment that amounted to torture, including mass beatings, death threats, sexual assault, and psychological abuse that included threats of rape, withholding food and water, threatening to kill the relatives, and even threats of burning them alive. So as you can see, Gray Zone completely lied about what's going on in Nicaragua. So as you can see, Gray Zone has proven itself to be a bunch of liars. The thing is that in Islam we have a principle. If someone has a record of lying, we usually don't take their testimony or information from them. Since Gray Zone cannot be trusted, their reporting should be rejected. However, the whole of grifter and YOLO journalism is much bigger than I thought. There is actually a whole network of journalists who have made a habit of supporting donations or of taking donations from various different authoritarian government. Gray Zone is among those groups. Inshallah, I will make a separate video where I expose them more thoroughly. Regardless, let's continue.
These figures, these claims, are largely based on two highly questionable studies. The first is the US government-backed network of Chinese human rights defenders. It formed its estimate by interviewing a grand total of just 8 people. I'm no economist, but 8 people doesn't sound like a great sample size.
Okay, so here he's strawmanning the research data. The data is not saying that because 8 people said this many were taken, therefore that is the case. It's simply giving you an estimate, meaning it is giving a probabilistic inductive argument. It's not saying that this is absolutely the case. The numbers could be higher or it could be lower. Also, people in villages are not stupid. They know if people are taken or not. Like, they're very aware of the surroundings. It's not like they live in the cities. If a large number of people are taken, then they will obviously notice it. Also, he is contradicting himself. Before, he used one Uighur detainee who was freed to prove that most detainees have been freed. So what? Like, you can use one detainee to make your case and they can use 8 interviewees to make their case? This is not consistent. Also, they're just using an estimate. They're not claiming anything absolute. Either way, let's continue.
The second study relied largely on media reports and speculation. Its author, Adrian Zenz, is considered a far-right fundamentalist Christian who opposes homosexuality and gender equality, and who once said he is led by God on a mission against China.
Here he's committing the genetic fallacy. Even if this is the case, and he is a far-right evangelical, that still doesn't mean he's lying. I mean, you have to bring contradictory evidence to disprove his claim, or prove him as a liar, or show evidence of him lying. He did neither of this. Also, Adrian Zenz is not the only journalist in the world who reported on the Xinjiang province. We have thousands of witness reports, verified by independent experts. For example, recently, an NGO published its own study. The report heading says, "This report is the first independent expert application of the 1948 Genocide Convention to the ongoing treatment of Uyghurs in China. It was undertaken by the Newsline Institute for Strategy and Policy in cooperation with the Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights in response to emerging accounts of serious and systematic atrocities in Xinjiang province, particularly directed against the Uyghurs, an ethnic minority, to assertion whether the People's Republic of China is in breach of the Genocide Convention under international law. For this purpose, dozens of experts in international law, genocide studies, Chinese ethnic policies, and the region was invited to examine pro bono all available evidence that could be collected and verified from public Chinese state communications, leaked Chinese state communication, eyewitness testimony, and open source research method, such as public satellite image analysis, analysis of information circulating on the Chinese internet, and any other available sources." In this paper, they actually quoted an ex-Chinese police officer who actually confessed and said that during his duty, he has seen nearly 150 Uyghurs dying due to torture and other methods in just 1 year. The officer said in an article in RFA, "No, you cannot say that. 200 died from Ucha Township," said the officer, who declined to be named, but previously served for 6 months as an administrative assistant at the camp in Yorkshire. He said, "Not that many. It's more like 150 or so from number 1 camp." He said, adding that the deaths had occurred from June to December 2018. during the time he was assigned to the facility, he was unable to provide information about any death that might have occurred at the camp prior to the time he worked there or after he left. 150 people in just 1 year. 150 people in just 1 year, in just one camp. Now, according to researchers, there are nearly 380 estimated camps that are confirmed by satellite imagery. Now, if there are this many camps and average death per camp is from torture or other methods is nearly 150, then the total number of Uyghurs killed would be an estimated likely to be 50,000 or even more, which would make sense because according to other research material, the Uyghur population has been decreasing in Xinjiang. Now, there's one Chinese government official report that shows that there's a huge decrease in the Uyghur population. Now, the data says, now again, this is a Chinese government data itself, so this is not like some Western propaganda. So the research says natural population growth in Xinjiang's minority regions declined dramatically since 2017. Growth rates fell by 84% in the last two Uyghur prefecture between 2015 and 2018. Now, combine this with reports of forced sterilization and other methods, it becomes quite obvious the Chinese government is committing a genocide against the Uyghur population. And that's why the numbers of the Uyghurs are decreasing dramatically. We can also see from satellite images that many mosques are disappearing. There are various different testimonies that mosques are being demolished. As a matter of fact, if you go to Xinjiang, you will likely see that the cities don't have as many people anymore, and people don't pray, which is very odd for a Muslim majority city. And so as you can see, they're using various different methods to reduce the population of Xinjiang. Regardless, let's continue.
There's not just misinformation, but disinformation out there. This video, claiming to be a Chinese police beating a Muslim for reading Quran in his house, got millions of retweets and likes. But independent studies showed this was actually an Indonesian police beating a local thief. What's more, pictures purported to show Uyghurs in Xinjiang's detention camps turned out to be doctored photos during a protest in Turkey and at a migrant shelter in Thailand. It is difficult to see the full picture of a region as diverse and complex as Xinjiang in the first place, and this Western propaganda doesn't make things much easier.
Again, here he is committing the history generalization fallacy. Yes, there are fake news out there. However, that doesn't mean all news about the Uyghur genocide is fake. Now, I want to say something to the public. Don't just share pictures and videos of Uyghurs without verifying whether it's true or not. Without verifying its source. There is a 90% chance that most videos that you see either on Facebook that are unconfirmed of Uyghurs being tortured are likely to be fake. The reason I say this is because, do you honestly think that a surveillance state like China, which has an army of hackers, they literally own all the social media giant corporation that exist in China. So, do you honestly think that some footage of Chinese police officers, torturing the Uyghurs would just get leaked without the Chinese government noticing anything? No, don't be dumb. Obviously, it's more likely that if you see some footage like that, it is fake. It's likely fake. So don't trust like some random pictures of Uyghurs suffering or video footage of Uyghurs being tortured. No, don't trust unless it comes from a verified source. And the reason I say this is because I see a lot of Chinese, the Chinese denial, Chinese conspiracy sites, Chinese government propaganda use this kind of fake pictures and fake news to kind of, whitewash the whole situation. So we have to be careful. If you see something that seems shady or it's unconfirmed, then don't use it. Only use a verified, confirmed testimony from the Uyghurs themselves. That is the biggest weapon that we have against the Chinese government. And here's a few clips of testimony from the Uyghurs and some of the horrifying things that they've gone through after they have gone to these camps. Here, take a look.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Darwinian Delusions Live. Today with me is another concentration camp survivor from Chinese-occupied East Turkestan. Ask her, firstly, the first sort of question is that how did she end up in this camp? What did she do? What crime did she do that she ended up there? And the second question is related to this. We are told these are vocational training centers where people are voluntarily asked to come in and they can voluntarily leave. So did someone ask her before they put her in this camp?
هذا birinci so'raydigan savoli mushu siz lagerga nima sababdan kirib qoldi? She does business, she does trade between Kazakhstan and East Turkestan, and she believes simply for being a Muslim and simply for being ethnically Uyghur, that she was taken into the camps, and she was essentially dragged out of one of the hotels she was staying in and taken directly to the camp. I'll basically go on and kind of take over here.
Sure.
And just ask her question. So basically, I'm going to ask her essentially how she was taken and what happened during the case. That's his name. So on May the 22nd, 2017, so almost exactly 3 years ago, she had a knock on the door from police. Three men and one woman police officer. They wanted to just simply do a passport check, and they said that, and this was around 8 a.m. and they said they needed to question her further at the police station, and she was taken to the police station that way. I'm going to ask her just like what happened next, basically. So once she was taken to the police station, they went through her phone. Her phone was had been gone through from around ever since she got there. So it would have been around 8:30 to about 3 p.m. And then after they went through her phone, they took her downstairs, what seems to be underground. They sat her on a metal chair and table, and they started to interrogate her. I just asked her what's next. Okay, so basically what happened was she was then interrogated till 11 p.m. So her phone went through until 3 p.m. and then she was interrogated until 11 p.m. Basically stuff like, you've been to Turkey. Why did you go to Turkey? Do you pray? Are you religious? Questions of this nature. And then she was made to eventually sign that document that she was holding up. And basically, and she first asked them, look, I don't know how to read Uyghur script, let alone Chinese script. Either you translate it for me or get me a Russian version, because she knows how to read Russian because she resides and she's a Kazakh national. And basically, in short, it meant that she was confessing to crimes of terror and that she was a terrorist, and that was a confession. And so when she had told them, look, translate it for me, and that she refused to sign until she could fully understand what she was signing, she was beaten. And they told her, look, if you don't sign it, then we will take you to a place where you will sign it.
Okay, so how did they beat her? Like what?
So she says she sat in a chair exactly like a picture like that. She sat in one of those chairs, as you can see there. Devam qıling.
Foto kıldı. Her türlü foto kıldıgan foto, burnumusunu şeklini aldı.
So what happened was she was taken to, and this all happened in Urumqi. So she was taken to a prison around Urumqi. So even though she's ethnically Uyghur, she's been a Kazakh citizen all her life. She's never actually ever had Chinese citizenship ever. But they made up Chinese citizenship. Not like they made up a Chinese ID for her. So now on paper, according to the Chinese government, she's a Chinese citizen back then. However, they did that. And then once they took her in, sort of similarly what we heard the other week was Umrat Dawood, where she was, stripped of her clothes. Males were able to watch. She was given prison gear. She was given what she says like a yellow top and shorts. Her urine was tested, facial scans were tested of them smiling, like different facial expressions they had to do to get a really good facial scan. And she says, according to the reason why they do the urine test is because to find out, to see if the women are pregnant. Now, at the time, she says she was 53 years old, so this was very unlikely the case, and that if there are any women who are pregnant, that they would abort them right then and there, and that's how they would let them in. Ma'qulada siz davom qiling, sizni shu tekshirishlarni olib bordi anondan keyin.
Tekshirishni olib bo'lgandan keyin o'qimiz.
Tamam. So she's holding up a picture there of she's found on the internet, but she says that that's exactly how her cell looked like. There's 20 people to a side. That's a cell, and right at the front there's a toilet. It's not covered at all, and they share that toilet there. And they share. They basically have turns in resting and sleeping because they do 2-hour shifts. And they are constantly shackled with 5-kilo shackles on their feet. And then there's a chain which joins to their hand. But because the chain in the middle is short, they're in this sort of they're in a sort of ruku' position constantly because the chain, that their cuffs are connected to their ankles, because there's shackles on their ankles. So they're like, there's a chain in the middle, if you can understand what I mean. They're in a sort of a ruku' position all the time. So yeah, she was in a room like that. So they basically slept on like metal or cement. They were never actually, she's saying that they were never given basically basic, what do you call it, linen or like bedwear or anything like to sleep on or to cover themselves. And they would have marks over their bodies each time after a nap or after waking up. So after 3 months, she herself was interrogated, and during that time, these women aged between 14 yaşında demişler ama 14 yaşında 80 yaşgacha. So these women are aged between 14 and 80, and so their names are called out. They are taken anywhere between 24 to 72 hours at a time, and they'd come back with various bruises and after being beaten, whether it be their fingernails being taken out or just being beaten very heavily, head injuries. She says she has seen rape. I'm going to ask her what sort of injuries she's been going through, because she said that's what she's seen.
She witnessed rape?
She said she's witnessed rape. Siz bevosita tajovuz ko'rdingizmi? So she's saying that subhanallah, when she would ask the girls if they were raped, they wouldn't say so, but she could tell they were, and because the first time she was interrogated, that she herself was raped. Sizga tajovuz qilgan insonning ismini bilsiz. Subhanallah. So she's saying that there are 2 places. Siz kamera ba kamera ya kamera yo'q ya deyapsizmi? Okay. So she's saying that there's a place where people are interrogated, which is downstairs or underground, and there are cameras there. But then there is another space which is outside. There's an outside area, but the rooms there they have very thick walls, so no matter how you scream, no one can hear you. And she says that she can name, she knows the names of her rapists, from the camp, and she'd be like, if an investigation were to happen, that she'd be able to name them. Yes, so she says this is a frequent, this happens frequently, and this is part of the torture. It's not a one-off thing. This seems to be just part of the practice, including like one of the tools of torture, if you will.
Küçük yine işte doktorlar gelip çıktal darı verdi. Özde suları var, aç suları içimiz. 10 günde bir kelip ukol saldım. Kan aldı, ukol saldım eğerimizge. Aç küçüküne tüymedim. Bana bir bu doktoruma neler biz kömeyimiz. Aç küçüküne düştü hemen kolumuzun çıkıp başta.
So basically, through her cell, that there was a little sort of gap which was enough to kind of put out your hand. And every week, the women there were given pills. So as you said, how do these women cope? Basically, those pills made them forget, like they were basically living zombies. And also it would stop their menstruation. So they were never given pads, or they were never given toiletries. And so every week they were given these pills to do that, and they were living zombies. So they, talk about coping. Their soul was taken out of them pretty much, and every 10 days their blood was taken. Okay, so every 10 days or so, she's saying that 3 male officers would come into their cell, and obviously it's a mixed cell with young and old. They have electric batons with them, and they make the women take off their clothes, all of them. And initially, especially when the new detainees would come in, some of these young girls, they were embarrassed, let alone take their clothes in front of the men, but also in front of older women, women that are their mother's age. And so you'd be beaten if you didn't take off your clothes. But it wasn't just enough that they had to take off their clothes. They said they were searching for whatever, for contraband or whatever, but they would make them do squats. She's from a place called Kola. She's in the health industry. We have like Uighur medicine, and so she's from a place called Kola, and she was accommodating people from the south of East Pakistan. So in the south, you generally have more conservative Muslims, like people in niqab, no beards, and she was housing them, taking care of them, feeding them, accommodating them. She's got a few houses, and in those houses, she accommodated people learning Quran. And one day, she was taken to the police, like people doctoring. We have a lot of this where people are dogged on. You have a term, you understand what that is from doctor. Okay, I'm going to ask her now. The first time, so she was taken because of this to a police station in Kola, and where she was interrogated, and we'll go on from there. So when she was taken into the one of the cells, she said she was put onto a chair where she was shackled. She had 1,000 watts of light on 2 sides, so she can't sleep, and she was in that state. She was interrogated that way for 3 days. Continuous. So demek 3 gün boyunca xulamadınız. So for 3 days, for 72 hours, she was not able to sleep.
Çayım yok, nam yok, sum yok, yeşim yok.
So she's saying for 3 days, no water, no food. Sorak qildi bu jarayonda. Interrogation, no water, no food. 1,000 watts of voltage light. You don't sleep, and sizni urdimu shu kunja?
Urdi da, urmisiq.
So and with that sleep deprivation, she was also beaten. Apparently she's got some scars. So apparently she had 18 kilo shackles on her ankles for 1 year. Rahatsız bolsun demişsiniz bu.
Demeyim alıyor, onu anlatı sakınmaydı, onu önüm olmaydı. Sonra 22 yaşkırım var Kaşgarlı kızın, fakat kimliğini işletmeden günahı, antın toğumu kalıp kaltakla, uzup yalnız esip durup, dem bağ toğu kaltakla, cinsi azayı tıkır, aşağı kıp, geçkitimiz kıynap, ömülep kırgan kız, bize yataktı.
So in her cell, she saw a 22-year-old girl being tortured to pretty much, she didn't die, but close to death. And apparently one of her injuries was that she was hit with an electric baton. but they also used that electric baton to put it in her genitalia, and she actually had to crawl. They're in the same cell, so she saw her crawl back into the cell. Yeah, that's something that she saw.
And this is a regular thing that happens in this prison?
She's saying yes, that it's a normal procedure, and every time the doors to any of the cells open, their hearts drop. Like, what's going to happen now? One of the girls which she was taking care of in one of the 13, she was 16. She was married and she was 9 months pregnant, and during the interrogation she was beaten a lot, and they gave her a needle and they aborted her child, this 16-year-old's child, when she was 9 months pregnant. And after the, say, death or abortion or whatever you call it, she was still lactating, and you know, if the milk, you know, doesn't come out, then the woman suffers a lot of pain, and she saw that pain. Yeah, she saw a lot of the women, a lot of women being dragged and beaten to death during that time. She sort of skipped over like what she went through. She just like stomach problems and blood pressure, and I didn't poke into anything else. And she's saying what she saw was just our people just being wiped out. It was just like so systematic, even back then. For 2.5 years, her own daughters are still there, and they were for 2.5 years in the camps. They're out now, and her 8 grandchildren are suffering from psychological issues because of this tragedy, and they're not right psychologically. I'm not a doctor or anything, but direct translation goes, it dried up her veins. I don't know, the vein, and she goes, till now she can't feel her so right now she can't really feel anything in both her legs. She's tried different sort of medication, but still hasn't been able to.
You know, with these prisons and concentration camps, we know they try to get rid of people's iman, their faith. What was it about religion, or is it that someone's more religious, they're going to be more aggressive towards you? Maybe ask her something about that.
After prison, right, when she was cleaning her shop, she was dressed in this way, and one day she was throwing out some rubbish, and the police were driving around like, haven't you learned your lesson? You are in prison, how come you're still dressing like this? And she made the excuse, well, I'm cleaning up, I don't want to get dirty, so I've covered myself up. And she goes, I don't want to, and the police, they're like, I don't want to see you like this ever again in this dress. Yeah, and she's saying, the more religious you are, the more you are punished.
The more you're punished.
Yeah.
And in prison, like I'm guessing they try to also indoctrinate a type of state atheism. Like, this is not the concentration camp, so we're not sure if they advanced it to this level, but with Sister Zumrat, they were trying to tell her there's no God and stuff like this. Was there any religious, atheistic indoctrination in the prisons?
Obviously, with concentration camps, you described Zumrat Dawood went through that. Even in 2007, she said she went through the same thing. Like, no worshipping in Islam. Like, pretty much everything what's happening now was happening back then as well. They make you say it. They make you profess that.
They make you say there's no God.
Yeah. She's saying, how could you not support us? I mean, we're being sterilized. She said, after the birth of her 3rd child, because, you know, only Uyghurs can have 2 children, her 3rd child, which is a boy, they made her put an IUD and that, you know, the ring, and that didn't work for her, so they forced her to get I don't know all the medical terminology, but she's not able to be pregnant anymore, whether they remove the uterus or whatever that is.
They had an electric baton. I didn't know what it was. It was pushed into my private parts and I was tormented with electric shocks.
As you can see, we have overwhelming evidence of the Uyghurs being tortured and killed. We have an entire database of missing people verified by their family members. We have Chinese government officials themselves admitting that there is a genocide, active genocide going on. We have leaked government documents showing how people are being monitored and controlled. We have satellite footage showing that there are hundreds of barbed wire camps being set up. I mean, do you honestly think that it's just happening for no reason? These things are obviously connected. I mean, why would these camps even have barbed wire in the first place? I mean, why would a re-education camp need barbed wire for? It's because they're not allowed to leave. However, the most damaging evidence that we have is a testimony from the Uyghurs themselves. And when you put all this evidence together, it becomes without a shadow of a doubt clear that there is a genocide going on in China, in Xinjiang. This is not some Western propaganda. This is real, it is happening. And brothers and sisters, please wake up. Our brothers and sisters in Xinjiang are suffering, and we have to try our best to stop it, or at least do anything we can for them. I mean, we can no longer stay quiet. In a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, Abu Hurairah reported, the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said, whoever relieves the hardship of a believer in this world, Allah will relieve his hardship on the day of resurrection. Whoever helps ease one in difficulty, Allah will make it easy for him in this world and in the hereafter. Whoever conceals the faults of a Muslim, Allah will conceal the faults in this world and in hereafter. Allah helps the servant as long as he helps his brother. You read about this in Sahih Muslim 2699. So as you can see that it is our duty to help our brothers and sisters. So let's do what we can for our Uyghur brothers and sisters. And let's not be quiet. Remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, the believing man and believing woman are allies of one another. They enjoy what is right and forbid what is wrong, and establish prayer and give charity and obey Allah and His Messenger. Allah will have mercy upon them, for Allah is Almighty and wise. Now, how can we be allies of the Uyghurs, our Uyghur brothers and sisters, if we just ignore their suffering? If we try to deny their suffering? The Chinese government is not our ally. The Uyghurs are, the Rohingyas are, the Palestinian and the Kashmiris are. These are our allies, our brothers and sisters, not the Chinese government. And with that message, I want to end the video. Thank you guys for watching. Again, if you like the video, like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to click the bell icon for more. Also, if you really like my content, then you can support me on Patreon. I would really appreciate it. And yeah, and with this, I want to end the video. Thank you for watching. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.